If you're like me, you cannot start the day without an excellent cup of coffee. My go-to brew method is a pour over using the V60. I'm going to show you how I do it. Let's go. You've probably watched other V60 videos, so I'm going to incorporate some of the things that I get inspiration from, like Scott Rayau and James Hoffman, and give you a couple of tips and tricks that I've learned over the years brewing my V60. So first of all, you need equipment. And the most important thing that you need is a good grinder. We're not going to go into grinders now. I'll have other videos on that, but just know that you need a good quality burr grinder. It could be a hand ground, it could be an electric, just needs to be quality. Something above $100 is going to do you well. Next, you're going to need a digital scale. I use the Akaya Pearl, Black Pearl, but you can use something like this. This is just fine. And I can throw a link in the description below on this one and the Akaya. But a digital scale to 1/10 of a gram is super important because we want consistency when we brew. So let's get started. My recipe is 22 grams of coffee to 360 grams of water. So that gives you a 16.4 ratio coffee to water. So this is a beautiful Colombia from La Plata, from Olympia Coffee Roasters, local coffee roasters. Colombia is one of my favorites, and it's always a joy to brew with this Colombia from Olympia. So let's get started. You're going to need a carafe. I'm using a glass double-walled. You're going to need a V60 dripper. I use the number 2 quality V60 inside of there. Just a piece of trivia, the reason it's called a V60 is because the angles are 60 degrees. And the theory is with the ridges and the hole in the bottom that you can make perfect coffee with one of these. And I do agree. Paper filter. You can watch other videos about opinions about filters. I'm currently using the white tabbed, but I have used the natural in the past, no tab. These tabs, you do have to adjust how you brew based on the filter. I know that sounds crazy, but they're not all created equal. So do your own test. Some of them, people say, taste a little more papery than others, but I use the white tab right now. First thing I do is fold it over and then use the tab to open it up. I stick it in my dripper and see how it's a little wonky in there? I use a heavy spoon, which I'll use later in the brew too, and I just put that on the seam by the handle, and then I can pre-wet, and it's going to keep the filter nice and steady. So I'm going to grab my 200-degree water, pre-wet my filter. What this does is it gets the papery taste that people say they sometimes taste out of the filter. It pre-warms the dripper. I use the plastic dripper because I will do a Rayau spin. So this is better for keeping the heat in, and it protects my fingers so it doesn't get hot. And then I'm warming up my carafe as well. I also will warm up my 2 little assistants here in my coffee cup. And then once that's ready to go, I pour out the paper water. I grind my coffee. I have it pre-ground for you today. I just did it, so always grind your coffee right before you're about to brew. And again, this is 22 grams. Turn on my scale. That in there. I like to flatten the bed, and then I like to dig a little well right in the middle. Some people don't like using their fingers, but I like touching coffee. I think it smells great. But you just want to get a well down in there so we can start the water so everything gets evenly extracted, or starts to get evenly extracted as we go into the bloom phase. You're also going to need a timer. Now the Akaya has a timer built in, but I'm old school. I like to use a timer, a manual timer, and then just use this for the actual weight. So now that we're ready, got our well, got our coffee, I'm going to start the timer, fill up the well, and I'm going to go to 3 times the amount of coffee that I started with. So about 66 grams. Then another hack, I take this nice tiny little whisk and I get in there and I get all of the grounds saturated with water. Now this is super important. Now you'll see other techniques where they use a spoon or they'll just use a swirl, and those are definitely fine. I've used them in the past. I got turned on to this little whisk trick and I love it. And as you'll see, I'm getting no huge CO2 bubbles. If you're seeing CO2 bubbles, that means that those grinds are getting exposed to water a lot later than other grinds. And then at 45 seconds, I'm going to do one long pour to just a little bit over 360. So my target is to end the entire brew at 360. And I'm going to go pretty quickly with this in concentric circles. My goal is to have the dripper filled to 360 in 45 seconds. And like I said, I go just a little bit above. Once I'm done with the long pour, I do a stir in one direction and then a stir in the opposite direction. And then I set that to the side. My cup is still heating up. And then this does agitate the grinds in there, and it causes some extraction. You don't have to have it spinning, but at 1:45, minute 45 seconds, I'm actually going to pick it up and do a spin just to get all of those extra grinds. I do the spin with the spoon to get any of the grinds that are sticking to the top, because we don't want a ton that are high and dry. So I just do that swirl, again, not to agitate the coffee bed too much, but to get everything that's up high in the filter, high and dry, to not stick in there. I will do another spin. So I do my first spin at a minute 45, and then as it goes down, I'll do another spin. And the reason that I do that, this is inspiration from Scott Rayout, is we want a flat bed when we're done. So I'm going to do another spin. And you don't have to get crazy, just a couple of rotations, and then just let it go. So I'm aiming for a brew time, a total brew time of 2:30 to 3.5 minutes. And we're at 2:40 right now, so it looks like we're going to end right about 3 minutes. So again, we're shooting for that flat bed when it's all done. The grind I use is between, it's on the finer side of medium fine. I know a lot of people, they use just a medium grind. I find for my setup, my grinder, these filters, that on the finer end of medium fine is good for me. So we're just over 3 minutes. We're almost done. You can see the flatbed emerging there. Couple more drips. And we're at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So take the dripper off. Again, we have a nice flat bed, and it's going to stay. We don't want it to look too muddy. We want to have a little sheen in there. Beautiful carafe of Colombia La Plata Sweetheart Profile from Olympia Coffee. The other thing that I like to do after I brew is just get a little aeration. Just give it a swirl. Make sure you dump out your paper water. And then I'm going to pour my cup. This is going to go all the way to the top. Don't get scared. This is the way I like it. That's why I've tailored my brew parameters to that. One thing I like about 200-degree water is once I'm done brewing, I can enjoy it right away. So this has been my brew guide for the Hario V60 number 2.